mystery and horror, the air itself is filled with monsters.
Children of the night, what music they make. It's alive! It's alive!
Well, hello, all you monster fiends, and thank you for joining us for another deep dive, factoid-filled episode exploring Hollywood's most famous monsters. I am your mistress of ceremonies, Sam, and I am joined, as always, by Dan from Bleeding Marvelous. Say hello, Dan.
Night, night. Night, night, Dan.
Night, night, Dan. Well, we're coming off the back of a strong weekend, some stronger than the others.
This was alcohol. It was pure ethanol this weekend.
No, that was me. Yours was work. Mine was
work.
alcohol. Totally different weekends. But still the same weekend.
I was The Walking Dead by the end of it. I'll give it that, yeah.
Bless you. Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Monsters Up North podcast. Today is quite a special one. It is our Halloween special. Ooh. With a bit of a twist. Something very different, something that we've not done. We talked about it on last week's episode, and we're not going to divulge back into that again. But we are going to get into it. I am going to do the disclaimer. Oh, if you didn't know, we're doing true crime.
Just in case.
Just in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
And you might find something very different with this week's disclaimer. Hopefully I can say it. And so, everything discussed in this episode is our opinions and our opinions alone. There will be certain subject matters that may have an effect on you, and this is why we must stress that this episode comes with very strong trigger warnings. There is no disrespect intended in this episode. It is simply for educational purposes. That's it.
Everything she said, correct.
And that's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, strong trigger warnings throughout. If it's not for you, I totally understand.
Yep.
But if you are into your true crime, stick around. We've got some interesting cases that we found all associated with Halloween.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I want these out of my noggin. So you can have them.
Pretty much. But first, how did we get into true crime? Can you get into true crime or find it interesting? Where did your interest come from?
When I was a kid, my mum had this book, and we were big book readers when I was a child. My mum, like the minute we were born, library, we had library cards. And my mum had this, she dealt in antiques for a long time, and she used to do a lot of car boots and things like that. My mum has always had her fingers in many pies when I was a kid. And she had this true crime book, and it had like all, and bearing in mind, it must have been 80s, early 90s. So it was all like, at that point, I think Bundy had just been executed, and Dharma was still alive. And like, when you look into that sort of thing, it makes you go, beg your pardon. Because in my mind, these big, huge serial killers were not of my time, but they were. My first 10 years of my life, probably the majority of the big hitters were alive and doing what they were doing, you know, which is quite a scary thought. So she had this book, and I became fascinated with this book that she had. And she caught me reading it once, and she went, "Are you sure you're okay?" And I was like, "I read Stephen King." She was like, "Yeah, you're fine."
Yeah.
So, you know, it was one of those things where I just got into it. And then you could collect these magazines. And there was like this whole thing where you had like this magazine collection. It was like, you know, you pay £3 for the first one, and the second one's like 25 quid. And then you get halfway through and you realise you've got to complete the set. But yeah, I started getting those and saving up for those and reading those, and then it fell off. And then lockdown happened, and podcasts become really prevalent during lockdown. And I started just scrolling and finding weird things. And then you get sort of addicted, and you're like, oh, this one and this one. And everybody says, try that one. So you end up listening to about 15 different true crime podcasts. And you have this fountain of knowledge about things that you shouldn't know about, really. And you see all these like memes about people that go, oh, these women that sit and watch like true crime shows to calm down. It's not a matter of like the subject matter. What it is it's listening to people talk about the experience in certain ways. It's different people, different podcasters, and different, YouTubers handle cases differently. And it's always nice to see different takes on how people give the subject matter either the respect or the killer the disdain that they deserve, things like that. So, you know, you've got YouTubers like Coffee House Crime, you've got your YouTubers like there's so many, like if when you start going down the rabbit hole, Mr. Ballon, you've got yeah, just you know, it just starts to get so murky. I was going to go for quirky then, and I was like, no,
murky.
Right? Yeah, it gets so murky.
Yeah.
But what was it for you then? Where was your
Mine was when I was younger. My mum's cousins were watching me, and they had a Jack the Ripper book. And I obviously reading was not my strong point. I am dyslexic, but they had pictures, a lot of pictures, and this is probably where my fascination with death came in, because they had very detailed pictures of all of his victims, and it kind of stuck with us. And not in a bad way either. I was very curious, like incredibly curious, and not freaked out by it. Bearing in mind, like at the time I was watching whatever, like I was completely desensitized by this point. And then it didn't stay with us for long. I must say, like I wasn't like obsessed and had to read and look into everything. It wasn't until probably the West Memphis 3 that I really started to pay attention. West Memphis 3 hit me incredibly hard as a goth kid, who saw complete injustice. It changes my stance on a lot of things. I always used to think that I had a strong opinion when it came to the death penalty. Really strong opinion where you honestly, you couldn't waver it. It was eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life, until that case. And if you can get it wrong on one, probably 100 more that you can get it wrong on.
Yeah.
And another one that kind of hit us a bit hard and still does to this day, I still get very sad thinking about it, is Sophie is obviously one of them. But this is before Sophie. Yeah, we'll get to Sophie. Is Eileen Warnes.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very ill woman, incredibly ill woman, who you'll never know the truth on what happened. I have a belief that partially what she said is true, and the rest may be completely triggered by the initial.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not playing out Monster here, because that is how Monster works out, is that the first one and then the rest are all affected by the first one. She was a very ill woman.
Yeah, I think she was traumatized from something that happened in childhood, and then she never fully recovered. The PTSD took over. She ended up making her own coping mechanisms, which then put her into this fantasy land that she lived in. I don't really know the right words, so I apologize profusely for any of the terminology I use, because
same here.
I don't know the specifics of what every single person has been diagnosed with officially. So
I don't think she was looked into. I generally
don't
think she was looked into. There's a very good documentary. I don't particularly agree with this documentary maker, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's done some of the ones which are a bit questionable. But he did talk to her on a one-to-one basis quite a few times. And he did things where the camera was away from her. She thought it was turned off, and you could hear Eileen.
Yeah.
Not the Eileen Warnes who you associate with. It was her. She was killed politically.
Yeah.
Jeb Bush was coming up for re-election as governor of Florida, and that was part of his campaign. And unfortunately, Eileen, even though she said on tape she wanted to die, I don't think that was the right thing to do. The woman was incredibly ill, and it still makes us quite sad. But Sophie is, and I point, and people on audio won't know, I'm wearing a Sophie Lancaster bracelet. That hit home really hard.
Yeah.
It was
that was
sad.
one of the worst things that could happen to a community, because it was such a left out of nowhere thing. I mean, this is no disrespect to people that communities this happens to a lot. This isn't me saying that yours is worth any less. It was a huge turning point for the alternative community, because we were always just weirdos. We were always just left alone. people didn't really know what to do with us, so they just
Name
kept us
calling
over
was the
there.
worst. Name calling was the worst that it got to. It never
Yeah,
got
it
physical.
never got physical, and for it to have got as physical as it did, to the point of where she died, unfortunately, and her partner was left in such a bad state. He's still now, I don't think he's got some lasting issues. And I didn't agree with the TV show they brought out recently. I didn't agree with Coronation Street jumping on the bandwagon. A lot of that annoyed the shit out of me, because as a community we take it so seriously when our own
Take
get,
it personally.
you know, because that could have been me, it could have been you. There's nothing that could have differentiated that person from that person. It was just the fact that they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that
still,
all that comes down to that murder with Sophie, and that's the saddest thing.
And still to this day, I'm 41 years old. I should feel comfortable being able to walk out wearing what I wear, and I've been doing this since I was 15 years old. I still get worried. Incredible, it gets us. But now anxiety is like, it's more. I understand it more now as an adult. That it's even worse. It feels even worse when you're thinking everyone's looking at you, and I always think everyone's looking at my shoes. Don't know why. Don't think that they are, but I always think everyone looks at my shoes.
I make a point now, if I see someone, like, because I've learned a coping mechanism with being alternative. When I'm outside of my work environment, I can dress like me. I'm an alternative. I don't know what you call me, but I live in that realm. I'm not a goth, so to speak, but I've been called goth. I'm just alternative. I live in this different place over here. But at work, I'm probably what you would call executive goth, because I just went back time and that. But when if I take a walk through the town that I work in, it's not the most forward thinking and adventurous place. If I see anyone who has dressed like a goth or a cyber goth, I will go out of my way to go up to them. And I'm not a confident person by any stretch of the imagination, but I make my point of going up to them and saying, I just wanted to tell you, you look amazing.
Yeah,
I've seen girls with corpse paint on. I've stopped them. And when I say girls, they're in their like late teens, early 20s, and I've said to them, you look fucking amazing. Don't let anybody tell you any different. And I will walk off, because that is something that people need to hear more often.
Absolutely.
You know, be you. Be allowed to feel like you're okay to be you, because God knows this life goes too fucking quick. And
it's not worth it.
I
saw a couple of kids dressed. I was in Washington Galleries. Is not a. It's an alright place. It's not very progressional. And I was in Asda getting served, and there was two kids behind us. Ghost.
Nice.
I think they were going, is when the Ghost movie came out.
Right.
And they had the makeup on, they had the masks in their hands, and I leaned over the counter and just went, fucking brilliant. Absolutely amazing. Because you could see all the older, because it's quite an older place, looking at them quite funny, and I just went, you look amazing. And I always go out of my way to say to anyone, you look fucking fabulous.
It takes 2 minutes, and it's going to make someone's day. Because trust me, you don't get enough positive reinforcement being someone from an alternative scene. You don't get, the people in your scene understand it and they appreciate it, but there's too many judgmental people. I mean, now not as much as when I was a kid. You don't when I was a kid, you didn't have the option. You know, there wasn't so many people that dressed up that way. You had your, you know, you had your cliques and your goths and you didn't have cyber goths, but you had goths, you had your traditional goths. I think they were more in the like 90s, and then you had your punks and stuff like that. And so there was all these different alternative scenes, but everybody got clumped in with this like troublemaking side of it. And it was like you couldn't be you until that whole mythos got blown out of the water, and then it was okay to be that person. And I don't know when that happened, but it was somewhere along the line. Anyway, I
don't know. I do remember being in Beamish though, and this woman who came dressed up, her and her husband came dressed up full 1950s era, and they, oh my God, they looked amazing. And me and my sister went literally pushing people out the way to get to them to say, you look, you could tell she when we said it, it's like she needed to hear it, because she was the only one apart from the staff dressed in that way. And I was like, no, I love it. I wish I was brave enough to do it myself. You look absolutely amazing. And the biggest smile. So it does pay people compliments. They deserve it.
Only if you mean it, though. Don't be a false Betty,
Oh
because
yeah,
false Bettys are worse.
don't
But
be
yeah.
false. But most recently, when it comes to true crime, my stance has kind of changed. I feel a bit ick when it comes to it, and it's probably the way that it's portrayed nowadays more than how it used to be. And it's possibly because I've had things that I've watched that have made us think, oh, that was fucking brilliant, because it wasn't victim shaming.
Yeah.
There's a lot goes on, and there's a lot of glorifying people. And I tell you which one it was. It was the Yorkshire Ripper. The BBC did a fantastic 3-part documentary on the Yorkshire Ripper, and that is a case where women have been looked upon very, very badly because of the positions that they were in when it happened. They didn't do that.
No, I also listened to a podcast, and I can't remember. I think it was either Morbid or True Crime and Cocktails that covered the Yorkshire Ripper case, but they told you stuff that you'd never heard, and the BBC didn't put it in that documentary. And it was finding out about how twisted he truly was when he was putting the women in the sofa. That one absolutely floored me, where he hid the bodies in an old disused sofa and put the cushions on top, and he'd just go sit and read his paper on it. And it was out the back in a bit of wasteland. You know, it was so just some of the stuff he did was just insane. But you know, I think with the Menendez thing coming out as well, true crime has shed light on certain. It may help people a bit better. I mean, the Menendez brothers, I'm still on the fence. I can't watch that fucking Ryan Murphy bullshit. I am not putting myself through that.
No,
the Dharma thing I enjoyed, but I took it as what it was. It was a fantasized, romanticized version of it, because let's be honest, Evan Peters looks fuck all like Jeffrey Dahmer. I'm sorry, Dahmer, you can't make him pretty. And I don't put me into the fact that Charlie Hunnam's going to play Ed Gein.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. I can't even fathom how the fuck
he
thought
was a
that was
2 foot tall, stinky little fuckwit.
Troll.
He was a goblin. I mean, and you're expecting this 6 foot something Geordie bloke to come in and play the most disgusting, vile human that ever existed. I don't think so.
No,
you know?
I know there's a documentary on the Menendez brothers, and there's also the Ryan Murphy shit show of a TV show. Now, I don't know what helps what. Does the show help what's actually happening right now? Because as of yesterday, they have gone for either a retrial or a state of they need to be released.
I think what I heard was they have been paroled with the intent of a new trial taking place. And the likelihood of the new trial will be that they would have done time served, so they'll get released at the end of the new trial. But this is all based on the allegations that their father abused them to such an extent that it led them to do what they did. I don't think it's ever a question of whether they did it or not in this situation. I think it's more of a question of how they got there. How did they get pushed to such an extent of where it wasn't self-defense, but it was a coping mechanism to stop the abuse. So
I've always been, I'm on the fence now, and this is why I don't think my brain can comprehend, and I don't particularly want to get involved, my brain to get involved in it, but I've always been under the guise of they did it.
Oh, I think they did. They had to have done it.
They definitely did. But regardless of the circumstances leading up to it, they did it. They deserve time. That's how I felt back then. And I know that's kind of shifting right now because of the likes of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. You know, the things have kind of changed with how we look at the way things, I mean, to be honest, I said it at the time and I'll say it again. She should have just owned up to it. She should have just held her hands up and went, fucking did it. Because when
people, the way that they treated her, like when she came out, suddenly she's a celebrity. Get in the bin. I mean, don't get me wrong. That documentary style TV show that was done with Joey King and Patricia Arquette was absolutely fantastic. I loved that. I thought it was brilliant. I mean, and again, I know artistic liberties and stuff, but for me, they didn't victim blame her so much, and they didn't make her a hero either. Like they did. How when that was left, I thought, right, okay, they've explained it really well for people who don't really understand the Munchausen by proxy thing, and you know
that needs to be explained.
Yeah. So that got me with that. And then she got released and everybody was going insane. And then she was in the news for marrying that guy. And then she's divorced him. And now she's marrying another person. She's pregnant. And she was on every single talk show and TV show. And I'm like, why are you giving her this platform? Her and that guy, we don't know to this day how much of the killing she partook in. We know that he did it. We know that much, but we don't know if she was specifically there or not. She says she wasn't. She says she was in another room or going off and doing something else, or she watched. I can't really remember it, but I know that she says she didn't partake in the actual killing itself, but we don't know that. That's just how it works.
If she owned up to it, if she sat there, put her hands up and said, "Yeah, I did it," and they looked into the lead up to it and the amount of medical work, she doesn't have fucking saliva glands because of that woman. They would have seen the diagnosis, and she would have been put in the care of her father. You would never have heard from her. You would never have heard about it. She would never have been seen again. But no, she didn't. But because of that, it does make you look into the reasons why people do or have done what they did.
And that's what fascinates me about true crime. It isn't so much about the killers, the serial killers, the murderers, the perpetrators, whatever you want to call them. It's not so much that. It's the psychology behind it. And as an adult, I would, if I could go back to university, I never went to uni, but if I could go back to uni or college, I would go and I would study criminal psychology, because there is a thing about it for me that it's this constant thread that they say that, you know, where they dropped on their head, did they have a head injury? And that is the common theme between these people. They've all had head injuries growing up, which has then caused some sort of damage to one part of their brain that's then led to the murder of animals, that led up to then to the murder of people. You know, there's this typical sliding scale of how these people get to where they are, you know, this progressive thing. So
there's the psychopath test. And I think I took it once, and the one that I failed on was the animal part, because I got dropped on my head. I fell off a swing, got a lovely scar on the top of my head to prove it. But the psychopath test is one way of knowing, but criminal psychology is so fascinated. What's his name? Mindhunter guy.
Yeah, I know you mean. I can't think of his name.
John Douglas. Mindhunter. Take the TV show out of it. The book is phenomenal. John Douglas has a lovely way of giving himself a pat on the back, because he came up with the term serial killer. He came up with criminal profiling. It was not all him. He does credit the people he works with, but he does like to give himself more credit than everyone else. But the best thing about John Douglas is how he describes things. He talks to you, and I'm not saying he talks to you like a child. He talks to you in very simple terms for you to be able to understand, as someone who's not part of that world, what it is he was intending to do. Mindhunter, the TV program, it could have been so fucking good. It could have been so good in the way that the criminal psychology was broken down, created into the profiling that you see on the likes of Criminal Minds and such like that, because this all comes from John Douglas, and a lot of it in the first series, especially with Ed Kemper, was right. Ed Kemper, the co-head murderer, likes to talk.
Yes. Hence why he records. Hence why he does all the reads the audiobooks online to make money and stuff.
Yeah, he loves to talk because he can't make money off his crimes. The sort of Sam Law puts that into place, but he can make money other ways. But yeah, he likes to talk, and he likes to tell you. He's very open about what he did, and he is a person who has said multiple times, "You might as well kill us, because if I go back out there, I'm gonna dig it again." He's very open and honest about it. And he did, when he was sitting with John Douglas, it's shown in the show, and it's very different how John describes it in the book, but he does stand up in front of John and says, "I could snap your neck and think nothing of it before anybody got to you."
Yeah.
And he went, but I'm not going to do that because I kind of like you. And but yeah, he's scared. That he said he almost came this close to either shitting himself or pissing himself. He didn't know what was going to happen.
Because Ed Kemper considered him a friend by the end of not the end of their relationship, but at the point of where he was having to deal with him and trying to find out like all the stuff that they needed to find out from him.
Yeah.
Ed considers John a friend, and it's crazy to see the level of honesty, because that's something that is very rare. You know, they have to eventually be backed into the corner, a lot of these guys, because of where they live in their
fantasy world.
Whatever their diagnosis is. Everybody's slightly different, but Kemper, I don't respect him. I respect his honesty. Yes, I respect the fact that he can go, I will do it again, please don't put me out there.
Yeah.
And I respect the fact that he's like, yeah, I'll tell you because it's happened and I can't change it.
Yeah.
You know, and that is something you don't get that often. You get your bunnies who are trying to get away with it. And I mean, I think Dharma, had he have been given the right platform, he would have explained a lot more of the things that he was doing to somebody that would have had more of an idea of what his diagnosis was.
The problem is they threw people at them who they knew what, Bundy especially, he knew exactly what he was doing.
He was all about the glamour, the glitz.
He was so tuned in. He was so fucking clever. What the judge should never have said this to him, but he did. At the end of the trial, he said, son, I hate the idea that we are in the position that we're in right now because I could see you over there. He was that fucking clever. Bundy did, he was his own defense. He was his own lawyer. He didn't have anyone helping him because he's a fucking little know-it-all. But they threw people at him to interview him, and he catered to them. There was a priest who went in, and I'm sure there's a documentary on this. A priest went in and said, "Oh, it's all because of pornography," and he was like, "Oh yeah, it was. It wasn't."
Again, we go back to the glamorization, because who played him in the movie?
Oh, Zac Efron.
Zac Efron.
What an absolute... I've never been so angry. I have never been so angry in my life at the end of a program.
It's awful. You look at these guys and it's like, stop casting. Jeremy Renner played Dharma in a movie.
He was quite good as well.
But when you take those guys and you put them in those movies, and then you see someone like Michael Rooker, who played Henry.
Oh, Henry. Yes.
That movie opened my eyes to someone who was to mental illness in a way. Because his version of the whatever flavor he had, he was just so willing to appease everybody. But I don't think he did anything. I think maybe the original crime, there was an original crime or an original incident which he did do something, and then he realized that he was getting the attention of people, and it was the attention he latched onto by agreeing, oh yeah, I did that, oh yeah, I did that, and he probably had nothing to do with the majority of it. But I think they proved it in that there was I think it was Henry, A Portrait of a Serial Killer.
That was the film. Yeah. It was Rooker's first film.
Yeah, and then there was recently in the last sort of 5 years, there was a TV documentary on I think it was Netflix for us that they put out about Henry, and it opened your eyes up to his flavor of mental illness and how he just had this want to be wanted, and that's what it was. It wasn't, he would confess to anything you put in front of him at that point. He was just so, and that's
open to it.
And that's then the sad case when you look back at these, that it is mental illness. It's not necessarily psychopathy, which can be classed as a mental illness, but, you know, it's not psychopathy. It's not narcissism. It's not any of those levels of you know, where you are with like sociopathy, when you're like, you're looking at your Patrick Bateman's, you know, I know he's not real, but you know,
he's still fucking stuck in their mind.
But that is your he for me is like your Bundy. That's what he mirrors kind of Bundy to me in a way. That whole, like, you put on the facade, this is the facade, the charm, the love, right, the want, but in here you're an absolute freaking mess. You know.
And to be honest, when it comes to the Netflix documentaries do serve a purpose. And I don't think over the last few years that they've done what they intended to do.
No.
they've glamorized a lot of things. Now, back in the day, there's a documentary, there's two actually that come to mind. The first one is The Thin Blue Line. That's the first time that a documentary has been able to help somebody who was innocent.
Right.
The second one was Paradise Lost, the West Memphis Three.
Yeah.
Joe Berger is not my favorite person in the world. He did the Ted Bundy film with Zac Efron, and yeah, and his execution of Paradise Lost Part 2 and not so much 3, but Part 2 definitely is a lot to be desired when it comes to the point that they were trying to make.
Yeah.
The first one, they literally heard of this case, and because it was goth kids and the satanic panic was happening, they were like, oh shit, let's get in on this. Thank God that they did, because if they didn't, and if this documentary didn't happen, Damien Eccles is dead right now. Because they went in with no clear knowledge of what was happening, just heard certain keywords, and they recorded, and as they were recording and speaking to people, they were like, oh shit, they didn't actually do this. Shit. And then the world saw it. And then the world got behind them. And then they went in with Part 2. And oh my God, this setting of it is horrific. They basically do it. It's them who do it to one of the parents. They kind of set him up to be a villain in a documentary. And they do what they did to Damien. They literally do it to him. He's not the greatest person. Bless it, he's dead now. But he was a police informant, drugs and such like that.
Yeah.
Nothing on the scale of what we're talking about when it comes to the West Memphis Three, because what a lot of things get forgot about in that case is 3 little boys.
Yep.
3 little boys who still to this day do not have a claim on who killed them.
Yep.
However, things are changing. Up until last year, they got so Arkansas really want this to fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, really wanted to. The guys ended up getting an Alford plea, which means in the eyes of the law, they say, yes, we did it, but truly what they mean is, no, we didn't. We just want to get out.
Yeah. And
they took it because, and I understand why, Jesse Kelly was definitely going to take it. He just wanted to get home to his dad. You don't hear height and hair of Jesse Kelly right now. Damien, obviously, for obvious reasons, wanted to take it, but Jason didn't. Jason wanted to leave a free man. And I can totally understand that. From day one, he has sat there and said, I did not do this. And there's proof that he did not do this. But he had to then think of his friend who was sitting on death row, because they could have quite easily turned around before they were looking to get a retrial. Arkansas could have said, here's your date. And they could have killed Damien. So he had to think of his friend, and he took the Alford plea. But there was a point I was going to make with this, and I've totally forgotten what it is now. I've gone off on one. I always do when I talk about it. It's the one case that I've always kind of stayed with. Oh, that's right. There was an incident in Arkansas, because Arkansas, like I said, want this to disappear. The money that these kids would get is ridiculous. And they want this to disappear. And there's DNA. There is evidence that would literally not put them where they have been accused of being put in. And apparently there was a fire.
And things got lost, and floods, and evidence, and yeah, I read all about all that, and I heard all
but
about
it's not
that.
True.
No.
It's still there.
A lot of people have said they think it's a member of the police or a member of law enforcement of some kind that perpetrated the crimes, hence why they're trying to bury it so much and blame it on these kids. So I don't know how true that is. That could be
one possibility, because they are really going tooth and nail to try and stop this from going to retrial. And up until last year, this is looking to go to retrial. They could have their names cleared. We could actually have a name or a suspect for the person who has taken these 3 little boys' lives. And there's Terry Hobbs is another one. Allegedly. Gotta say allegedly, because the fucker likes to come for people. He is incredibly suspicious. But there's also another person as well. It's Mr. Bojangles incident, where a man walked into a restaurant. Was it a Mr. Bojangles restaurant? and he was covered in blood the night it happened, covered in dirt, covered in blood. And when he got questioned, he ran away. Nothing was said, nothing's been seen, but nobody looked in on it. So there is a few incidents where it comes, but yeah, looking to go to retrial. Thank Christ. These little boys need justice. It's as simple as that. I understand that it's getting to the point now where Damien's free now. We don't have to worry about the fact that he could be sentenced to death.
Mm-hmm.
It's that these boys need justice. That their families need to know what happened before it's too late for them. Time is ticking. I know that two of the parents have already passed away. Mark Byers and his wife, they've gone, so they never found out what happened to their boy. Michael Moore's parents truly believe they got the right people.
Right.
They truly believe that, and they have stuck to that since day one. But Stevie Branch, his mum, Pam, who was married to Terry Hobbs, is very much on the side of the West Memphis Three. But she wasn't initially, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
You can't tell a grieving mother how to react, how to act, not in the circumstances that her son got took away.
No.
So, yeah.
The first true crime documentary I watched that really hit hard for me was one called The Killing Fields. And it was a 3-part documentary. It's not the one that's on Netflix now.
Oh, right, okay.
It's I think it might have even been a 3-season thing. I remember there was basically it was about these two detectives. It was a retired detective, and it was real, and an existing detective. And it was the one case from the retired detective, like the age-old story that he never solved, but this is genuine. It really happened. And it is about what happened in the Killing Fields documentary that's on, but they went into more detail about it. And basically the Killing Fields is about a killer who murdered a lot of sex workers and buried them in various locations across this part of, I think it was Texas, or one of the outlying places. And it was just they took each murder specifically, and they concentrated on each one and how the women were found, and if they were buried or if they were left out in the elements. And it was so sad to watch the emotions of these policemen, because they were trying so hard to find anything new. They were trying so hard to bring more light to the case, and every time they felt like they were getting somewhere, they were getting blocked by someone or something. And it was one of those ones that you sat there and you just went, shit. And I know for a lot of people, the one for them where they were questioning everything was it The Making a Murderer with that whole one. So that was another one where a lot of people watched that and saw,
we were so invested.
It was it was the fact that as a person who doesn't have a lot of run-ins with the police, because I'm not God-fearing, I just don't really want to do illegal shit. I'm quite happy pooting along in my lane, right? So for me, anything goes wrong, police, you trust in the police, you trust that you trust in the process and the system to get you to the justice that you deserve, right? And I think Making a Murderer for a lot of people was the one that sat everybody back and made them go, oh fuck. Oh
and also how a state can prosecute 2 individuals for killing one person in 2 different ways. Exactly. That is the part that always got me, and why it was completely overlooked. They literally said 2 people killed one person, completely different scenarios, and they got away with it.
And the flood and the fire, again, evidence. It's all very convenient, and it's all very sad to watch, because at the end of the day, if Stephen is completely innocent and he didn't have anything to do with this, you've got a man just sitting there rotting in a jail cell for no reason.
You've got a kid who just wanted to watch WrestleMania.
Exactly. And these people's lives have been upheaved because the police force were just looking for a quick, let's get this solved, because it's getting to a point where people are like, there's going to be riots.
It was called Brandon, wasn't it? He was called Brandon. Well, Brandon, that's it. When you read Damien's book and you watch West Paradise Lost is a good documentary. However, like I said, some questionable bits. West of Memphis, that by Amy Bergener, who is one of the best documentary makers ever. She has done some serious shit, and she does it really well. Peter Jackson was their trustee. Peter Jackson paid for their defences. The reason why you have such a great team working for Damien is because of Peter Jackson and Fran Welsh. He said he doesn't like bullies, and he put a lot of money. And also him from Pearl Jam, bless his heart.
Eddie Vedder.
Eddie, he just sat there and he was like, I thought this was something that would be like one and, over and done with. And I'm like looking nearly 10, 15 years later and I'm still sat in the same position I was on day one. He stuck with them. Still to this day sticks with them. But yeah, I'm not too sure on the Making a Murderer. On the kid needs to be out. But him, I'm not sure. I don't know.
The kid definitely had mental illness of some kind.
Oh.
Or he was misdiagnosed as a child or undiagnosed as a
Or
child.
not even looked upon. He was because of the state of where they come from. The likelihood is he's a no mark. Doesn't matter. Really matter.
And again, healthcare in America, it would have cost money to take him to get him diagnosed. If they didn't have healthcare in their job as part of their job, then they'd have to pay for it. And it's something that people. It's a lot. We are lucky in the UK.
So lucky.
The NHS is a luxury that we cannot take for granted. Yes, we've got problems with it.
Oh yeah.
Yes, the queues are long. Yes, the nurses and doctors are overworked, and I'm not decrying any of that, but okay, we pay for it through our wages, but at the end of the day, it is a service that we have. There. You can go no matter what your socioeconomic situation is. You have that option. In America, people are dying because they can't afford to go to the dentist, so they get an infection in their tooth, which then travels to their heart, and they die. People, like they get a cyst, and the cyst will overtake it, get gangrenous, and then they have to have an arm amputated because do you know what I mean? There's shit that we can do. We just take for granted. That
absolutely. And our prescriptions as well. I always remember seeing this girl on TikTok crying her eyes out. She was an American over in the UK, and her inhaler ran out, and she had a meltdown because she didn't have the money to refill it. She went to a pharmacy crying because she was expecting hundreds and hundreds of pounds. £8.50 to refill her. I mean, that was the time. It's probably a tenner now. Yeah. But to have her inhaler refilled, it's crazy that's what she thought it was going to cost hundreds of pounds to have that done. Yeah, we are incredibly lucky, even though there's problems. There's always going to be problems. Never going to be as straightforward, especially with the fact that the population's growing and shit like that. Can't get into stuff like that. Otherwise, I'd go off on one. What was I going to say? There was something I was going to say. No, when it comes to Brandon and I think that really brought to light false confessions to people. But he's no different than Jesse Kelly. The case is quite similar. They did the same to Jesse Kelly as what they did to Brandon. They had him in interrogation for 12 to 15 hours, no parents, no solicitors, to the point where they were literally saying what they needed to hear to get out. That they promised them the world.
Coercion is a sick tactic used by the police, to be honest.
And for the two of them, because they are of a they have mental health issues, the two of them are exactly the same. They promised them their parents. That's all that mattered to them. That's all that mattered to Jesse, was he got to see his dad, and they didn't deliver on that. It's disgusting, but it really brings to light false interrogation, false, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's coercion.
That's it.
Yeah, it's where they coerce for a false confession, and then luckily now with the fact that you can't really get away with that so much because everything's filmed, every body cams, every witness statement, every interview has to be filmed or recorded in some way. So there's a lot of things that have kind of had to change in that respect.
And thank God. And I know that we can't, our interrogation, because they can go in and say what they want.
Oh yeah.
They could literally go into an interrogation room and tell a person, you did this, I know you did this. We over here, we can't do that. We have to ask the questions in order for them to be able to say they did it. We have the right of no comment. And they will just continue on. And no comment over in America, the likelihood is they're going to get their ass handed to them.
Yeah, plead the fifth puts them in jail, basically. Yeah. It puts them in jail.
It doesn't look very well for us either. When the no comment, I don't know if people realize that when it goes to court, the judge actually looks at the fact that they no commented. They do take that into consideration. And I often, because I watch a lot of 24-hour police custody, I
I
have
watched a lot
actually,
of 48 Hours.
I have watched every single episode of 24 Hour in Police Custody, and I know that there's a new one coming out this week, I believe, if not already out. And a lot of them all do no comment, and I'm like, are you guys are you for real? Like, why? Why?
It's misplaced loyalty with a lot of these guys, and I'm not saying I've never been part of a gang. I've never been part of a such a tight knit community that um I've had that kind of relationship where you would take the rap for something someone else did to keep them safe.
Fuck no.
I've
I'm
never
grassing you right in.
I've never had that kind of situation, or that kind of relationship with somebody. You know, they say family's different because you don't know where you're going to be when the family happens. And I'm not saying I would take the rap for something someone did in my
Not for
family.
my
No,
family, fuck no.
I'm the kind of person that if I had a kid, I would march them down the police if they did something stupid, and I'd be like, "You fucking tell them what you did."
Yeah, I'd be exactly the same.
That would be me.
I am a loyal friend. I will keep your shit to a certain degree, but I will keep your shit. But I will not keep anything that is to put me in a position that I could end up in trouble.
Yeah, no, I'm
No
not going to be an
chance.
accomplice to anything you fucking done. No way, Pedro.
No.
You made the choice. You did it. It's not my fault. So,
No. Well,
so yeah.
before we get into the Halloween like the Halloween stories, documentaries I would recommend to watch that I have thought of being in, and Dan can give hers as well. I'll Be Gone in the Dark, the Michelle McNamara story on the Golden State Killer.
Yeah.
There is an accompanied book, which is Michelle's book, which was finished by Patton Oswalt in the end. Brief description: Michelle McNamara is a crime writer who took it upon herself in a very respectful and tasteful manner to look into the Golden State Killer because she felt not a lot was being done, or she could give help. She is not. She is a sleuth to a degree, but she never put herself in a position where she was like, this person did it, get them. She would never point fingers. She would just provide evidence. But unfortunately, spoilers, Michelle actually passed away.
Yeah.
A year before he was caught, a year before a book could be finished. And the end of the documentary is just, I cried. It's so good. 6-part documentary, very detailed. So take your time with it. It's not something that you can rush into. The book is even more detailed. It took me a long time because I just kept stopping and starting, because it was hard. It was heavy.
Yeah.
There was a lot in there. West of Memphis is another recommendation because it is incredibly. It's just Amy's so good at just doing to the point.
Yeah.
There's no glamorization of anything. She's done a documentary that is on Netflix that is about the church, Irish priests.
The Keepers. Is it that one?
I think. Is that the one with the nun who got killed? This is about no killing in this one. This is all to do with
the babies.
Yeah. It's a hard watch. It's incredibly hard, but it's something that I feel that people should be made aware of because the church should not be able to get away with the shit that they do.
I can tell you a little snippet about that. My turns out my nan had given birth to a son who was taken away from her. She was told he was dead. And
oh my God, I know this story.
Yeah, and the church took him away. And most recently, my dad, who is now 72, 73, found out he had an older brother. And you can tell he's one of them, like hands down, pictures of him. And they found out, that the church had taken him away, told my nan that he had died, and he was given up for adoption. And he recently found out through doing, I think it was one of the ancestry tests combined with the spit test thing for DNA thing, and found out he had half siblings. And my cousin, who's obsessed with all this stuff, basically put him in touch with my auntie. So my dad and my auntie and my uncle found out that they had an older brother at the age of 72, 73. So, and that was all to do with the church scandal. They literally
the mandolin laundries. There is, if you ever get a chance to learn about it, you need to know about it. It's still something that is going on very much today, obviously, because Dan's family was affected by it, and they're still looking for justice.
Yeah.
They're still looking for justice for these babies, for these women. So yeah, I would recommend looking into that one. I'm trying to think, oh yeah, Amy also did another one called An Open Secret. This is probably one of the most hardest documentaries I've ever watched in my life. It's not true crime. Well, it is, because it's a fucking crime. It is. No, it is. It's nothing to do about it. It's about the children of Hollywood. It's it's the one documentary where me and him had to go,
Enough.
we need to walk
Mm.
away for a minute.
Yeah.
We need a minute. But it did take us down a rabbit hole. These children are children who have been exploited to the worst of the worst of the worst in Hollywood. There's a huge fucking ring of them. We know who they are. They know who they are. But because of that, nothing gets done about it. But these kids bravely put their story forward. This is what Corey Feldman, and I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions on the guy, but this is what he has been screaming for the last few years about. And it doesn't half make you think, when you watch this documentary, how fucked up he actually was through it all. And
he is now. He very much is now.
when
He's not right.
there's also one bit that me and Ant found interesting. He won't diss Michael Jackson. He won't sit there and say Michael Jackson was this person that everyone believes him to be. We truly think that he was protecting these kids. When you listen to these kids' stories, you can kind of understand why he may have been slightly protective, because he could have quite easily been a part of all of this. It's sad. It is so sad. It is. I don't want to say it's a great watch. That is not what it is, but it is an interesting watch to know what this industry has turned out. I mean, the industry was terrible back in the 30s, in the 20s to the 30s. There was women who did stand up, though. There is a lot of women who did stand up, who didn't take the casting couch.
Yeah.
And their stories are really fascinating, but it kind of gets murky and it gets fucking disgusting towards you get into 2024, and it's still going on. But
There's
that's fine.
one documentary, and I'm going to be useless here with you guys because I cannot remember the name of it. But if I remember rightly, Blink 182's Mark, his wife is an investigative journalist, or she works for something where she was doing some research for something, and somehow she got pen pally with, I want to say he was the Day Stalker. That might not have been his official title, or he might have been one of his many, you know, like they give them like 3 or 4 different monikers sometimes.
Yeah.
But it was the guy who drew pictures of all the women that he killed. And I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
And basically she would go and visit him, and he would tell her little snippets about names of people he killed. And he's in prison now. He's been convicted of 1 or 2. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 of the murders, but he claims he's killed over 100 women. And what he does in prison is he draws the pictures and the faces of the women that he's killed. Wow. And it's only, I want to say it might only be like a 4 or 5 parter. And I'm sure it's Mark from Blink 182's wife. I'm sure it is. I could be completely barking up the wrong tree because it's been a couple of years since I've seen it. But it was the way he was with her, because he started to become obsessed with her, the killer, by the end of the documentary. And like they sat her down and they were like, look, you've got to separate yourself from this now. It's getting to a point where he's ringing her at home. He's ringing, you know, he's constantly emailing her, and because they give them access if they've not, depending on crimes that you've committed, you get certain access to certain things. So you'll have like limited access to emails and things like that. And obviously they do go through they read them, or they skim read them before they're sent. But they were all harmless in one way, but that there was just a lot of them, you know. So it became a thing where it was on Amazon. It was on Amazon Prime, and I found it randomly one day. That one was that was quite kind of shocking, because she found the families of the people that they were all sex workers as well. He was a sex worker killer. He would murder women in abandoned warehouses and leave them in there. And like he was Samuel something. His name was Samuel something. So if you look up Samuel serial killer sex workers, you'll find the documentary under that. But the other one, and he's a vile human being, by the way, absolutely. He comes across as like this
They
very
try to.
nice little old fella, but then
Mhm.
by the end of it, he just gives you the ick. It's disgusting. But the other one is City of Angels. If anybody gets a chance, that documentary is one of the saddest things I've ever seen, and I'll leave it at that because I want you to go and look at it. And I'm not going to tell you what it's about, but go and watch it.
I can top that. I can top the sadness. Oh God, I can. It's called. I know I should never forget it because I spoil it for people so they don't go out and watch it.
Yeah,
It's awful. My God, I can't remember what the name is. It's gonna right. I'm gonna forget it, but it'll come to us later on.
yeah.
But it's one of the saddest documentaries I've ever seen. It's you're focusing on one thing, and then you're blindsided at the fucking end.
There is another one that I've just remembered, and this one was the most horrific, and I cannot even explain to you how horrific this one was. So if you have the time to watch this, it's only a one-parter, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And it's called something like 77 Minutes. And it's about the McDonald's massacre that took part.
Oh my God, yeah. I've never watched it, but I've heard about it.
It's the most harrowing thing. And I mean, I'm made of steel. I don't have feelings 99% of the time. So I can switch off to the level of violence because being a hardcore horror fan, you have a you can cope. You just can. Yeah. But this one, woof, you got video footage. They didn't pixelate anything. You saw what you saw. And I'm sure it was called 77 Minutes. And it's literally because that's how long it took.
Yeah, I know the name now.
And it is a tough watch in every way. And that was thanks to True Crime and Cocktails. They covered it on one of their episodes and they were like, look, there is a documentary. This is the name of it. If you can bring yourself to watch
That's what Red Handed do.
We say to you, take your time, try it. If it's not for you, turn it off because it gets worse. It gets progressively worse.
Red Handed always credit their resources of where they're getting stuff, and also if they've watched a documentary, they'd be like, "This is it." But if you go in it, you go in at your own peril.
Yeah.
The documentary I was referring to is called "Dear Zachary: A letter to a son about a father." It's one of, I will ruin it. I will ruin it for people so they don't fucking watch it. It is horrible. It is literally a documentary maker. His Andrew Bagby has been murdered, and it's by his ex-girlfriend, his crazy ex-girlfriend. And when she did it, she was pregnant with his kid.
Yeah.
She gives birth to the kid, and then it goes to a whole custody with the grandparents. Yeah. And all of this is going on. It's talking. It goes to what happened on that night to him growing up, and it backwards and forwards, and it really is a love letter to the father, from the father to the son of who he is. And these grandparents are going through absolute hell because this woman is the devil. She is literally the devil, and Canadian laws are not fucking great. She didn't get a lot of time for killing this person, and their grandparents had to then come up with a custody plan for them to be able to see their grandchild with their son's killer standing right in front of them. They come this close to getting everything they wanted because that woman is so fucking unhinged. And then she goes and does what she does. The worst possible thing she could ever have done. She killed herself and her son. The fucking bitch. I ruined that documentary for everybody because I struggled so much after it.
Yeah, I literally looked at it and I was like, I don't think I can. There's a level of things, and I know I said it last week when we were talking about it. I will cover some cases that have children involved, but it's not. We're not going to be graphic in any way, but when it comes to ones like this where you use children as weapons,
and she did,
to prove points, and you're sick enough to take it to the extent of where, well, if I'm going, I'm taking everyone with me. I can't watch people ruin.
She ruined their lives twice.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a different thing when there's kids involved, because for me, I've never really wanted children myself personally, and there's an incident where I am not really able to have children. And that's fine. I don't want pity. I'm okay with that
God,
choice.
no. Yeah,
you know, at the end of the day, that's something choice was taken out of my hands. So okie dokie.
Sometimes the universe just gets it.
And that's the thing. So for me, I can understand women. I come from a place where I can also understand women that desperately do want kids and can't have kids. So I can see when you see these women or men that kill their children as for weaponizing them for whatever reasons. I can't watch those documentaries because it's something about it that just makes me angry. Like I get so furious because I think to myself, you want to waste your own life, go ahead and do it. You know, that's your choice for you specifically to do. It is not your choice to take the life of another, especially not a child who doesn't know what's up or what's down or just wants love out of it.
Doesn't even know life.
And you're robbing them. So you know, for me, I just can't deal with matricide. I find very hard to get my head around. It's not it's a weird
one case that has kind of stuck with me and it still sits about here is Chris Watts.
Oh, that one will never, for me, watching can I just say thank God for body cam footage, because that one fascinated me to a degree of where you're watching him and his behavior is so fucking weird.
You see him on CCTV pulling her body out and he still stands there and says nothing.
And it's like, even the neighbor was like, he was so strange. Like the way he was behaving when he came in the house, it was just weird.
He got skinny man syndrome and he wanted them, instead of divorce, which would have been messy and they were already in financial difficulties, he literally took the easy way out for him. I can understand her to a degree.
I don't understand how that was an easy way though. I mean, can you imagine?
No, it's not the easy way, but in his head that's what he thinks. Exactly. Just divorce her. What the fuck? That your kids would still be here. What gets me is, to her, arguments can happen, things can happen. I cannot understand that. He then puts her in the car with the two kids. He's in that car for 45 minutes with them children. 45 minutes. In rage, we all know when you get in one, how long it can take. You can snap out of it, or it can take you a bit to decompress. He had 45 minutes to decompress. Think about what he was doing. And he fucking didn't. He did it anyway. He is a narcissistic, evil, horrible. There's so many fucking. There is nothing mentally wrong with that man. No. He is nothing. He did it because he went from being a larger person to a skinny person and got skinny man syndrome and went, I can do better than her. I can get this person. And I'm telling you now, in the next few years, it will come out his mistress had something to do with it.
100%. She was very strange in the documentary I watched. She was like, I don't know, there was something that, you know, you could smell something coming off of it. It was like
bullshit.
Yeah,
he makes me angry, angry.
You have the option of, yes, okay, financially, emotionally exhausting bullshit of divorce and custody and all that crap, right? I get it. It's a lot. I'm from one of those households. I understand that, you know, it is what it is. But I was quite lucky. My parents were never too bad. You know, it could have been a lot worse for us. But there's that route, which eventually would blow over in a year or two. In a year or two, everything would be fine. You'd have the life you wanted. You'd be able to have children every other weekend or whatever they grant you.
Yeah, you could have had the life of Riley.
But then you went with ruining two live children and an unborn baby and your wife. You killed 4 people to have a life with another woman who didn't really give a shit about you enough. Why would you give yourself an option where you're going to be living in a constant state of fear of being caught for however long it takes you to be caught for the rest of your life, or then going to prison and serving for the rest of your life, or just a divorce? I just can't see how to get to that extreme level of...
No, you can't, because we don't think like that. But what gets me is his parents still to this day blame her
Oh, I don't get it. Like when you see him tell his dad in that confession in the
Oh, when he's saying that she killed the kids and then he
he,
killed her.
yeah, he gave it all that, and then you see him confess, like when he
Mhm.
actually sits there and he goes, I did it, I did it. And he
Mhm.
looks at his dad and he goes, I did it, I did it. And then he just starts crying like a baby. And his
Fucking
dad just sits there
bitch.
and you can see his dad just put his head in his hands and his dad's just trying to process.
Because the
And
likelihood is his dad's probably trying to think of fucking excuse for him, which is what they are doing right now. They still, if you watch interviews with his parents, they don't give two shits about Cheyenne whatsoever. They
she was
just care.
pregnant, regardless of whatever you think of that human. She was carrying a baby. She was almost full term with that baby. It wasn't like it was she was pregnant for a month. She was pretty pregnant. It wasn't
Yeah.
like,
She
you
was
know,
full on. And also, regardless if you think she is the world's evilest bitch, she still didn't fucking deserve what she got.
fight for custody to get the kids away from her. She's
Exactly.
that fucking bad, you know. And I don't think she was, because if you see any of her friends
Oh
that
no.
were interviewed, I think he was one of the masters of the whole emotional manipulation
Oh,
abuse. You know,
100%.
he was the one that would make you feel like shit for something he's done, because he'd flip it on you and make you feel bad about it, you know.
And he would have love bombed her and he is the fucking worst, but for some fucking reason he sits right in the top. Like I literally, if something comes on about him, I go down a fucking rabbit hole, and he's not even that fucking interesting.
I still can't believe that Sheen. Did you see that Sheen pillow that did the Happy Families pictures? Like they said, oh, we can put any picture you want on a pillow. And they put the picture of Chris Ross and his kids as the advertising
No,
picture. And
no.
everybody went nuts when it happened. And everybody was just like, are you fucking kidding
Are
me?
you fucking serious? He's
Are
a
you
fucking
fucking
family
kidding me?
annihilator.
Obviously, being Chinese, they just saw a happy family photo or
Oh,
wherever they're from.
and it would have been all over Netflix as well.
And it was a
So,
popular one, so it was everywhere. So they went, oh yeah, they didn't read obviously what it was
oh my
about, and it was
God.
put on
There's a,
everything.
to
I'm
be honest,
laughing because it's so fucking
yeah,
ridiculous. I'm
it's
not
so fucking
laughing because it's
no,
that, you know.
no. It's
Well,
just oh my God, why? There's actually a case on right now. I watch a lot of court TV.
mm,
And there's a case on right now with another family annihilator, very similar to Chris Watts. Don't know too many details about this one, but I will because it's what I do. I watch court TV. But let's get into Halloween true
yes.
crime. Um, I have first the real life Candyman. Do you have your right? I know you do because we already discussed this.
No, but
Um,
you tell it. You tell this one, and I'll read what I've got. And
it's
yeah,
probably the same, to be honest. It's
probably.
8-year-old Timothy O'Brien's father murdered him in Houston on October 31st, 1974, by poisoning his candy. So the kids were trick or treating. I'm gonna abbreviate this because I did read about this one. The kids were trick or treating, and the dad took it upon himself pixie sticks. Now we as Brits, we do know what these are. It's little straws of sherbet.
Hmm.
I remember used to get them. Used to have to rip the top off.
Fairy dust.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we yeah, and it was a paper straw with sugary goodness in it, and a little touch of cyanide. And he said to the kids, "You can have whatever you want from your trick or treat bag." It was him and his sister from your trick or treat bag before you go to bed, and he kind of like pushed the pixie sticks to the front. The boy picked it up, which was Timothy. The girl picked up something else. The dad wasn't paying attention, and Timothy took the cyanide and died. And he also actually give him Kool-Aid to wash it down with to make it taste better. The motive for it all? Life insurance.
He was in debt up to his eyeballs, if I remember correctly. He was like hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and he thought if he could claim the life insurance of his kid, I mean, he tried. It also says he tried to poison his other child, Elizabeth, and then
He tried,
three other kids to cover up the initial
yeah.
poisoning.
It was going to
So
be a whole thing,
he
but
got
because
super
Elizabeth
sloppy.
didn't
Yeah,
do it, it kind of got out of hand. And despite what you may think, this is the only case that anyone has ever been killed by poisoned sweets.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where the rumor came from with the candy. You know, I don't know if it actually happened. You know, the razor blade and the candy whole situation.
I
I
think that
believe
was
it has happened.
fabricated. I think it was
Yeah.
a fabrication because what they wanted to, it was screening. Mam's going crazy. And they actually do have screening for sweets. I don't know if we do. I don't think we've ever had anything like that where it's been you know, I don't think it's a
If
thing for
anything,
us.
people put laxative chocolates in as a joke. That used to. I remember there was
What?
a rumor once. Yeah, there was a rumor once, and when I say when I was a kid, I was probably in my teens. That if you went trick or treating, some people used to put in like laxative laced chocolate, like bar pieces, and kids would obviously eat everything, and it'd be in there because they wouldn't know the difference because it was
That's
still
so
chocolate.
weird.
Because you
Okay.
can buy over here. I don't know if you can get it in the US as much, but over here there used to be a thing instead of taking like a laxative tablet or that whatever that nitrate is that you citrate or whatever that stuff you guys drink that I've
Yeah.
watched women down bottles of and think, oh, your life is going to end very soon because everything you've ever eaten in your entire life is going to about to come out. But we have chocolate bars. The laxative is inside chocolate bars, so it when they're given to kids, it's like,
Oh my God, Poop City.
yeah.
Well, that's my first one, is the real Candyman. I just want to put a thing out there. We haven't divulged into these. We haven't deep dived into them. We haven't rabbit holed them. There's a reason. We just want our brains to be, you know, intact for a bit.
Yes. It's been some heavy weeks, and I think, you know, these themes are heavy, but
We don't need to imprint them in here. I have enough going on at the moment.
at the end of the day, if you guys want to look into them, then by all
Yeah.
means do. This is, you know, we're giving you a taste, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Who
My
you got?
next one is The Last Trick or Treater. Peter
Right.
Fabiano and his wife Betty had gone to bed on Halloween in 1957, believing that they were finished with the trick or treaters. However, the last late night visitor was seeking more tricks than treats. Upon hearing the doorbell ring, Peter got up from his bed, grabbed the nearly empty candy bowl, and walked to the front door. He then opened it, and the ultimate trick was played. On his doorstep stood a woman wearing a mask who raised a gun and shot him in the chest, killing him instantly. According to Betty, she found her husband with a bullet lodged just below his heart. Judy, Betty's 15-year-old daughter from a previous marriage, called the police, and Peter was rushed to the nearest hospital, but he never woke up. Upon the investigation, they discovered that Goldine Pizer was the murderer. She was a 43-year-old widow who admitted to the killing when she was arrested. She said a friend of hers, Joan Rabel, a former employee at one of their beauty shops, the couple's beauty shops, talked her into committing the crime because she'd been friends with her for years. The motive behind the murder basically was that Peter stood in the way of Joan's plan to pursue a romantic relationship with his wife.
Wow.
So she coerced a woman, Joan coerced a woman to go and commit the crime to bump off the husband
Fucking
so she could be with the
pussy.
wife in 1957.
What a bitch.
That is, do it yourself, love.
Yeah.
Joan, come on now,
Go
Joan.
and get your own fucking hands dirty, Joan.
Yeah.
Jesus wept. Well, my next one is recent. Mine is the Lisk family massacre.
Oh.
So William B.J. Lisk brutally murdered his father, William Lisk, stepmother Susan Lisk, and 23-year-old stepbrother Derek Griffin on Halloween night in 2010. So I'm talking really recent. When Derek's 16-year-old brother, who'd been staying the night at their biological father's, discovered the bodies the next morning, he at first thought it was a Halloween prank. Why would you not? One day later, in an unrelated tragedy, BJ's aunt, Susan Dubmeyer, died in a garage fire. BJ, who has a documented history of mental illness, pleaded guilty to bludgeoning Derek with a claw hammer and then fatally shooting William and Susan. Evidence showed that Susan had been essayed prior to and after her death. BJ killed himself in prison in 2015, more than 4 years after pleading guilty to the crimes he committed on Halloween. Oh, it's the word clawhammer.
Yes.
Ugh.
I mean, I know that Peter Sutcliffe used a ballpoint hammer.
Yeah,
that was
literally
his
back of the
weapon,
head.
wasn't it?
Motherfucker.
Yeah,
You know, my father-in-law got pulled in for that.
It's
Yeah.
a whole weird old thing, the Yorkshire Ripper.
I know a lot of people in my area who have especially because we come from a mining place. A lot of got pulled in, not as suspects. It's just there was someone who called in claiming to be the Yorkshire Ripper, and they had a Macam accent. So, and because of choices with weapons, they put two and two together, and they interviewed a lot of miners. My father-in-law being one of them.
It's bloody insane, it really is.
Yeah, to be honest, the person who we should have sat here with us for true crime is my father. Because my dad was a prison officer in Lower Newton Prison for 20 odd years, and he has seen and been with some of the most notorious killers in UK history. One of them is Rose West for many, 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 many years. And he has a lot of stories.
I used to work with a prison officer. He left that and started working with us, and he used to be Dennis Nielsen's, the one that was on his.
Fuck Dennis Nielsen. He is another one who wouldn't shut the fuck up.
Yeah, he used to be Dennis Nielsen's, and Dennis Nielsen used to do this thing where he would sell Polaroids.
Well, that's what, because when my dad left the prison service, that's what Rose offered him, was a picture, because as my dad said to us many times, no one would know if she walked out the gates tomorrow. They would not recognize her whatsoever. She is very unrecognizable to the person who you think in your head how she looks. And that's what the press want more than anything, is a photograph of her. They would pay big money. And she was like, I'll give you your retirement. Here's a photo. No, fuck no. My dad has a lot of stories. When we did True Crime on Nerdy Up North, he was like, why didn't you like talk to me and have me on? And it's like, fuck no. Because you tell, like, we can tell things that can kind of like, people can forget about. You're like, this is part of my life now. Like, no, you're good. My next one is the murder of Martha Moxley.
Right.
So the body of a 15-year-old girl was discovered on October 31st, 1975. A resident of a wealthy community of Greenwich, Connecticut, Martha had been, what is what people bludgeoned to death with a golf club. She was last seen hanging out with Thomas. Oh, I know why I picked this one. She was last seen hanging out with Thomas Scarkle, the neighbor and nephew of Ethel Scarkle, who was the wife of Robert Kennedy. I knew there was a reason. Senator Robert Kennedy, who was assassinated 7 years earlier. It was Thomas's younger brother, Michael, however, who was tried and convicted in 2000 for her murder. That's not a typo. The case this is what I'm reading off. This case remained unsolved for 25 years, but the wheels of justice not only turn slowly, sometimes they swerve off the road. Michael served 10 years in prison, then was granted a new trial based on a judge's finding that his original defense attorney had no adequate representation of him. He was freed on a 1.2 million bail in 2013, and after years of lawyering, his conviction was vacated and a new trial was ordered. On October 30th, 2020, 45 years to the day since Martha was last seen alive, the state announced it would not retry him. In a bizarre coincidence, a best-selling true crime book called Martha Moxley's Murder was published in 1999, and it was written by none other than the racist dirty cop himself, Mark Furman.
Yeah.
I knew there was a reason I picked that one, because as soon as I saw Ethel Scale, I can never say her name right. Skakel, Skakeley. Well, she was Ethel Kennedy. She was married to Robert F. Kennedy, who was assassinated while he was going for his presidency. I know it's not true. Well, it is kind of true crime because he was shot, he was murdered. There's a brilliant documentary on Netflix, 6-part documentary all about Robert Kennedy and what that man could have done. How much he would have changed American history, what he would have brought. Him and his brother had very similar ideologies, but Robert was the brave one. Robert went after the mob. Robert stood up for gay rights, black rights. Like this is what this documentary portrays anyway, and this is all I'm basing it on, so please to God, do not come for me if anything that I have said is wrong. But I thoroughly enjoyed that documentary. But yeah, Berman fucking wrote a book on this. Dirty bastard.
Throw it in the bin.
Yeah.
My one is the smiley face murders. Now, a lot of people might know about the smiley face murders because they are creepy as hell. And they are still to this day, as far as I am aware, an unsolved phenomenon. Chris Jenkins died at Halloween. Unlike all the other poor murder victims here, Chris Jenkins could have been very well tied into a widespread crime phenomenon known as the smiley face murder theory. University of Minnesota student Jenkins disappeared on Halloween 2002, turning up in a Mississippi River, still wearing his Halloween costume, some 4 months later. His death is believed to have, by local police, to have been the result of an accident or suicide, but those similarities between Jenkins' death and those of many of the other young men found in water across North America have led people to wonder if it wasn't. Now, anybody who knows the smiley face killer's MO, you always find it's either in the place they go missing or the place they find the body, there is a graffitied smiley face sprayed somewhere in the vicinity. They are always men and they are always found in water, right? Nice. And it's been happening for 20 something years. It's a huge, it's like the smiley face killer is a massive phenomenon. And on occasion they've had people, now I don't know if it's actually the person that has committed the crimes or it's a hoaxer, but on occasion they get people ring up the police crying.
Oh my God.
Literally crying and confessing. But it goes nowhere. Like it's become this really strange phenomenon, like the smiley face killer. It's like a boogie, you know, like a bogeyman kind of thing, you know. It's like they just disappear. These men, young men, they'll be with their friends in a bar and they always seem to be on a night out. This is the thing. And with the smiley face killer, somehow they manage to separate the person, or the person separates themselves because they've had enough to drink and they want to go home early or something like that. They're not sure if they're a cab driver or they're just somebody that waits outside clubs to see if they can find someone who's inebriated enough to be able to coerce them into walking with them and chatting to them. But next thing you know, it's always near a body of water. Always that they always go missing near a main river or lake or something like that, and they always get found months later because obviously these big rivers and lakes pushes them God knows where. But again, there's always a smiley graffitied face in the place they go missing or the place they're found. It's absolutely an insane phenomenon that's been happening for years and years, and Halloween seems to be when he does strike. Or she strikes, who knows, I don't know, but likelihood is statistically it is a white male because most serial killers are statistically white males. So
is my next one. He's not a serial killer, he just killed one person, but this is the killing of Japanese exchange student Yoshi Hattori. It's quite sad actually. Yoshi was 16 and he had the tragic misfortune of knocking on the wrong door. In 1982, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, he and his friend had gotten lost on the way to a Halloween party and mistakenly thought that he found it when they saw the house for Halloween decorations addressed 10311. The correct address for the party was 10131.
Oh, bless. With
the eerie coincidence that the 4 digits were the wrong address, they knocked on the door. Homeowner, 30-year-old Roger Pierce, opened the door. Yoshi excitedly told him that they were there for the Halloween party, but what he didn't realize is that he was holding a shotgun. And he shot Yoshi point blank range in the chest. He originally wasn't charged for it. But public outcry with the case went to trial, and a jury agreed with the self-defense argument and he was found not guilty. However, his parents went on a huge crusade over gun control. And if anyone wants to, I didn't take any of the details of it because it felt like that would be then me going down a rabbit hole. But if you want to look at Yoshi Hattori, Hattori, and the work that his parents have done, apparently it is magnificent work when they've done with gun control of what they can do because of, but they are fighting the fight. Poor Yoshi, that's so sad.
I mean, firstly, because the kid got overexcited about a Halloween party, it's no reason to shoot him.
Also,
I
he just
mean,
knocked on he knocked on your door. It's not like he fucking barged in and was like, party time, bitches.
but also, if you don't want people knocking on your door at Halloween, two things: you don't put decorations outside, and you put a sign up to say, "I'm not
Oh,
celebrating. Please move on."
you do what me and Ant do. Turn the lights out.
And don't answer the door. You don't
Exactly.
give the impression that you're willing to have your door open. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just common sense. So why take a gun to that just presumes the one of two things: he was looking to do it, or he was
Yeah.
expecting someone that was going to cause trouble. Like,
Yeah.
there was more to the story. The guy had a backstory. Because why shoot a 16-year-old child?
16-year-old. Exactly.
No,
He had
that
nothing. He
one.
had no weapon on him whatsoever.
He was probably just, oh no, that I'd see that's mindless. That's just a senseless one for me. That one. That's just, yeah.
Yeah. I
My
wanted to
next
mention
one,
it because of the
yeah.
family, that's all.
No, that's fair, because they've got a long fight on their hands over in America for the gun laws. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be.
No, me
I mean,
neither.
oh, yeah, we're lucky.
We're lucky. We're so lucky.
My next one's called A Truly Unwelcome House Guest.
Mm.
Adrian Isogna, Leslie Mazzara, and Lauren Menaza, forgive my pronunciations, spent
Always.
most of Halloween night 2004 handing out treats to door-knocking kids at their home in Napa, California. At approximately 11 p.m., the three women decided, right, I've had enough, I'm knackered, I'm going to bed. However, there's one more person that knocked on their door that night. Menaza, after hearing a blood-curdling scream, ran out of the house and drove away. She panicked, got in the car, and just went. She didn't even think about the other people. She just went. Fight or flight, and she flew. The Mazzara and Isogna were left in the house at the time, but both had ended up being savagely stabbed to death by Eric Matthew Koppel, a friend of one of the women. He turned himself into police and confessed, but explained that his motive for the double slaying, they haven't released it. They have never released his motive for why he killed those two women in the way he did. He's now serving full life sentence without the possibility of parole for stabbing those two women for absolute, like, he had a reason, but whatever the reason was, it's not been released. So weird.
Okay, get fucked. My God. I thought there was like something like a legislation where they had to, or do they not have to?
I think the times when they can't is if it's to do with children under a certain age. If it's something that it has something to do with, like, what do you call it? Like the CIA or some shit like that. Like there's like National Secrets Acts and shit like that. If they had any association to any political shit, things like that, they're not necessarily.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because they said they were going to release the GFK files, didn't they? And
redacted.
Oh, you motherfuckers! I was waiting for that. My next one is a bit unusual. It's called Halloween Murders Predicted by Son of Sam. David Berkowitz. Oh fuck, David Berkowitz, man. This man is not intelligent enough to do what he has supposedly done. I'm sorry, he's fucking not. But according to this article, David Berkowitz is responsible for the New York City's 1977 Summer of Sam Reign of Terror. Don't put my name in that category. Is a man who knows. What, sorry? Summer of Sam, Reign of Terror is a man who knows murder. He certainly knew about the murders of Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman, and in advance. How? Well, Berkowitz didn't plan and kill the Manhattan couple. He was in jail when the prediction, and it does give you air quotes, prediction, he predicted their Halloween 1981 deaths. So how did he know that they were going to be shot in the head execution style? Well, he had long since claimed that he was the only party responsible for the killings attributed to him. Berkowitz says that he was, oh, that's right, he wasn't partly there was other people involved. Sorry, I've totally misread that. Berkowitz said that he was part of a satanic cult and that Sisman had a video of one of the Son of Sam shootings that was going to make its way to authorities, so the cult killed him to protect themselves. Is there any truth to the rumor? Well, one of the greatest books of crime non-fiction ever, Maury Terry's The Ultimate Evil, argues in great detail that there is. So what they've always said is that, well, what David Berkowitz has always claimed is that he is a patsy, basically, for a larger organization of the Son of Sam killings.
Mm-hmm.
I can't with that, man. I
He
just
talked to a
can't.
dog. A dog told him to do it. So
I just fucking just can't. There's two people in this whole true crime world that really rattle my fucking gate. Actually, three. I had Chris Watts in there. David Berkowitz, just because, and Dennis Rader.
the BTK, yeah.
Yeah, kind of to the fact that you've gone and done all these heinous crimes. He did it for glory. He did it for what he classes as glory.
Mm-hmm.
He did it for fame. He did it for notoriety. He even penned his own serial killer name.
Find, Torture, Kill, wasn't it? That's what BTK stands for.
I hate him. I hate that man so
and his
much.
daughter. Oh God, that girl.
No. God, needs to rot.
She refuses to acknowledge the person that he is. She will only acknowledge the person she knows.
No.
And the person she knows was presented as a completely different person to
So was Gacy, but his wife will fucking contest to what basically does not take his side. Jesus Christ, how the fuck could you?
He owned a KFC. Gacy had a franchise of KFC, people.
Ah.
Yes. I think it doesn't matter when you kill people at the end of the day. If you are resorted to it out of genuine fear of your own life and self-defense, that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, you're talking.
But the majority of these are just insanely preventable.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, there's a lot where there's mistaken identity, people just knocking on a door. It's Halloween though. It's
the do you want to do the Eggin murders one?
Because oh shit, yeah.
That one is sad as hell, in respect of
the Eggin murders happened. So 21-year-old Carl Jackson was fatally shot on Halloween in 1998 by Curtis Sterling, 17, one of a group of boys he confronted after they egged his girlfriend's car. According to an informal tally by the New York Times, at least 24 people between 1984 and 2010 were seriously wounded or killed in stabbings, shootings, beatings, or accidents sparked by egg throwing.
I mean, honestly,
around Halloween.
That statistic is fucking scary.
That's terrible.
24 people killed over someone throwing an egg.
Well, in its 2010 story, the Times reported 2 days before Halloween in 1994, a man leaving a bar in Brooklyn was hit with eggs tossed by several boys. The man stabbed and killed one of the boys, a 12-year-old. In 1996, a 10-year-old Brooklyn boy was shot in the neck by a stray bullet after an egg fight on Halloween. On October 29th, 2005, Joseph Padro, 31, the brother of a police detective, was shot and killed in the Bronx after he chased a group of teenagers who pelted his minivan with eggs. What the fuck has the world come to? I know egg is a terrible thing to get off furniture and stuff like that. It is a bitch. It stays there for you. You got really clean, but to kill someone for it.
It's an underlying level of rage that people have that gets
it's like road rage, isn't it?
It's got to get misplaced. It's got to be something that was bubbling under the surface for a long time, and then that is the thing that tips you over the edge.
Yeah,
and it's usually something stupid. But good God, I ain't going to prison for murder for someone egging my car. I'll be pissed off. I'll probably chase them for a bit if I could.
I'll probably try and throw the fucker back.
But it's not worth killing somebody over.
It's an egg.
Wash it off.
It's protein.
But fuck's sake, that one I found exceptionally sad, because for me that was like the statistics on that one for someone throwing eggs. 24 people in a 20 odd year period.
That is terrible. Have you got any more?
I do have the one that I don't really want to talk about, but you've got it as well. But
Do you want me to read it?
The Toolbox Killers is the one I'm talking about.
This is what we'll end on.
Okay, we're skimming over a lot of the details in the Toolbox Killers.
Please, can we?
I will only talk about this specific one that I've got here. If anybody wants to do, if you want to do a deep dive in this one, I will warn you against it for your own sanity, unless you're somebody who genuinely can take a lot. This
really affected me. I listened to I listened to the last podcast on the left doing it, and not even they could make it any lighthearted. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
This doesn't really go into a lot of detail on it, so we'll keep it that way, shall we?
Yes.
Yeah.
On October the 31st, 1979, 16-year-old Shirley Lynette Ledford was leaving a Halloween party when she was hitchhiking and picked up by a dingy van belonging to Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris. This deadly duo was known as the Toolbox Killers, whose main practice was picking up female hitchhikers in the 70s and then torturing them with toolbox tools. They committed the kidnapping, rape, torture, and the murder of 5 teenage girls in Southern California over a 5-month-long period. Shirley was the 5th and final victim of Bittaker and Norris. She was held captive for nearly 2 hours, in which she experienced a night of
hell.
You can skip forward. Torture, SA, bodily beatings, verbal abuse, and this is how she passed away. So skip forward for 10 seconds, or if you don't want to hear it. But she died through strangulation via a wire coat hanger, and her body was left on the front lawn and was discovered by a jogger the next morning.
Just randomly put there, just no regard, just completely discarded. Oh,
those guys are truly. You get your big hitters, you get your Bundys, you get your Dharmas, and you get all those guys. And I call them the big hitters because they're the most reported, not because I think they deserve any kind of glory.
No, absolutely not.
They are genuinely the most reported. But these guys, no one talks about them.
Nobody should.
No, they shouldn't. But I feel like
the
poor victims, what they went through.
Yeah, I get it. I do, because you're right. When it comes to the big hitters, as Dan's described them, what goes on in here, what goes on in the head, that becomes the interesting part. It's the whys, the reasons, the means, the hows. But when you're looking at pure evil, just sheer evil, these are the cases.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking, people. I don't want anyone to go and look into them. I don't want the video, the tape recordings was released last year.
Yeah.
And I stupidly listened to it for a good few minutes. It's tape recordings. When he kidnapped someone, he would have a set tape recording that he would play to them to tell them what was going to be expected of them.
Yeah. And what was going to happen during the period that they were with them. And yeah, I genuinely will tell you now to not look into them.
Don't listen to the tapes.
But what I would say is, if you are genuinely interested, just be prepared.
Be prepared, be warned.
It's they did the film. I know that there was a film done.
It doesn't. I don't even think you could put that onto film to where it'd be done in a justified way. I don't know how you could do it.
They didn't include the harsh reality of what actually happened during. They basically just insinuated things were happening in the van, in the film, and I think it was like a 1990 made for TV jobby. Because made for TV makes it even better subject matter. But yeah, Bittaker and Norris are two of the most sickest. If you want to deep dive into psychology, and I'm not talking about what they did to the women, I'm talking about just pure knowing what you want to understand this, look into those two, because they are a whole nother level of.
There is a special place in hell.
I don't think hell would even want them, to be honest.
No, I don't even know. I don't even think the devil, I think he would even kick them out. There is no place good enough for these kind of people. And we're going to leave you with that, because that was the one. It makes me bones cold.
Yeah, I've got goosebumps. I've got goosebumps will come up.
Even just seeing the name, it's like, ew. Recommended podcast though for any of the cases, because it's Halloween in this, they'll be doing a lot of them. I listen to Red Handed and Last Podcast on the Left for my true crime. It's the only two that I listen to now.
Morbid, True Crime and Cocktails, Gruesome. I do listen to Red Handed as well on occasion. I'm sure there's many out there.
There's loads. Just don't listen to My Favorite Murder, please, people. Don't do it. Don't do it.
No, because something happened with him, didn't it?
It's two women.
That was it.
Yeah, she got involved in the Michelle McNamara case. There's a lot of, if you're a Last Podcast on the Left fan like I am, you will understand where it comes from, why we don't listen to them. They steal content.
Right.
They've done things in very distasteful manners. They have laughed at victims as the one thing that I will never be able to pass off. No. Don't listen to them. Avoid them at all costs. Go and listen to Last Podcast on the Left. You will have an if you can get on their level, because what you have to understand with them, they are comedians, but they are telling a case. Marcus does some of the best research that has ever been done. A lot of people take what Marcus has done and they use it for use his method to help their podcast because it works, but they make you laugh. Because these subject matters are not fucking easy. So they have a way of making you laugh.
I would say the same for True Crime and Cocktails. Like, I know I've banged on them before, but...
I do as well, the Last Podcast, so...
Lauren Ash is... Everybody knows her from Superstore, and she's been in other things recently, but her cousin doesn't get enough glory, Christy Oxborough. She does all the research. She writes out all of the scripts. She does everything, really, when she does all the background work, and she is hilarious, and she is so informative and respectful in the way that she researches, which is not always something you find.
No.
I'm not saying that Ash and Elena aren't in from Morbid and things like that, but I find that there's a level of respect because they're Canadian, so they're going to be genuine. They're just going to have that streak of like, it's in their DNA, that element of proper. But yeah, Chrissy doesn't get enough respect or recognition, I don't think, for the amount of work she does and how she caters it. When there's a murder, she will literally gloss over it and then it's done, and then they move. They'll talk about everything, but what specifically happens gets quickly talked about and then it's forgotten. Moved on. They don't linger over certain things, which I think is really good, and they've never glorified serial killers. No,
Marcus and Henry Zabrowski, who, if you are a fan of Wolf of Wall Street, he is in that movie. They are so good at they are so good at being able to make fun. Like, Henry does voices for nearly every serial killer, and they are just as worse as the worst. Like, they're the worst of the worst, but they take you out of a moment that you really need to be brought out of. They're very clever in that way. I love them. Their book that came out a few years ago was very clever how they did it. It was very podcasty style. Every section had a picture of them, and it's like they say in the section. It was really clever how they did it, but it was just a bare introduction into true crime. Red Handed brought a book out a couple of years ago which really gets into the psychology of crime. It's a really good book. I could list 100 true crime books that I've read in my time, but I'm not going to, because I really want this episode to end now. It's because a few years ago I could have done this full time. I really could have, but as I'm getting older and I'm starting to see things differently, it's like I don't really want to anymore. Like, I'm happy to have my own thing, and like I wanted to go back to the way things were when you didn't talk about this shit. It was just your thing. You kept it to yourself.
I'll always be fascinated by the psychology behind it. So while people continue to be dicks and do stupid shit and be absolutely abominations of humans, I will still always be interested in how they got to be like that. It's just the human condition for me.
I just don't want to talk about it to anyone. I'm happy I'll pour hands with it.
Well, you can see why we love we thought this would be a natural progression just to try.
Yeah.
Because of like obviously all the movies and stuff like that. And I know it's a pretty serious one for a Halloween episode, but
it is, isn't it?
You know, at the end of the day, we've tried it, and we will only time will tell if it's worked. And if it has, that's cool. We're not. It's not something we're going to go into, so you don't have to worry. Exactly. We're still going to be sticking with our movies and our monsters, and Sammy's going to tell you now who's going to be our one for next week.
And it's so good. We really thought we'll go down the lighthearted route because hey, this week's been heavy, and it is Halloween. And to be honest, this will be like Halloween's in the middle, so it's like Thursday. We come out on Monday, and then Halloween, and then we've got Monday just after it. So this is like a split Halloween kind of thing. Next week we're doing what I would class as one of the greatest zombie movies of our time. We're doing Shaun of the Dead, people. Got red on you.
Got red on you.
Yeah, we're doing Shaun of the Dead. We're not doing the Cornetto trilogy. No. Just Shaun of the Dead. The impact that Shaun of the Dead has had on us, it's had on the zombie genre. What it took from the zombie genre. I know we've glazed over it a little bit when we've talked about George A. Romero. But yeah, we're going Shaun of the Dead. Yeah, it's what we needed. We needed it.
Big John says dogs can't look up. Just so you know.
Oh, I don't know if they can, because anytime anyone asks that question, I always think about my mum's dogs, and I'm like, can they? I don't know.
They can. Yes. Dogs can look up.
So yes, Shaun of the Dead next week. This has been True Crime for Halloween. Oh, yeah. Don't know
what
how
I'm going to say is goodbye.
Yeah, I shut my laptop down as soon as the last story was done. I was like, laptop closed. So yes, this has been True Crime. We are on YouTube every Monday at 8 o'clock on the Nerdy Up North YouTube channel. You can find us on any podcast platform, but what you have to do is you need to type our name in. What I keep forgetting is, and I've put this on every post now, to find every individual podcast, you need to type the name in. It is not under a Nerdy Up North banner. That's just YouTube. We are Monsters Up North on iTunes, Spotify, or any way that you get your podcast from. The links for Bleeding Marvelous, Nerdy Up North, Monsters Up North are where, Dan?
Down there.
Oh, look at your pretty nails.
Down there.
Mine will be gone next week, so yay! Fingers will be back to normal, and I won't be talking with my hands so much. What else? Links. Done. Audio goes out on Tuesday, if I didn't already say that. Yeah. Well, if there's nothing else left to say goodbye, Dan.
Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye. See you, pals.
I wasn't expecting that. Oh, stay spooky, everyone. Bye.